we probably need to start from the beginning, which begins about 3 o'clock yesterday. We had gotten done with DCTF Live. We're sitting around. I'm knitting, as I usually am in the office.
As you are wont to do.
Yes. And a bulletin comes across Twitter that there's going to be an emergency session of the State Executive Committee of the UIL.
Yeah.
And the State Executive Committee, for those who don't know, is kind of the governing body. They are the court. They're the Supreme Court of UIL and Texas high school football. And it is in regards to an eligibility issue with Katy. Katy, of course, this wrecking machine in 6A Division II. They've got a big game tomorrow night against Manville. But it was self-reported that Katy had used an ineligible player in their game last week against Friendswood. And so they go, and the possible ramifications here is that Katy could be kicked out of the playoffs.
Yep.
Could be disqualified.
Been down this road before, too.
Yes. In 1998, they were disqualified heading to the state championship games because they had used an ineligible player in the state semifinal or in a playoff game prior to that.
Yeah.
And so San Antonio MacArthur went in their place.
Yeah.
So Katy has been down this road before. There is precedent here. For Katy.
Not good precedent.
So
it's been a while. In fairness,
so all eyes were on Austin and the State Executive Committee for the hearing on this eligibility issue with Katy. Yeah. And after we followed on Twitter, Danny Davis and Jenny Dial at the Houston Chronicle and a few other people were there and live tweeting it, and they did a fantastic job. Yeah. Shout out to them. And we'll talk with Danny Davis here in a bit. The long story short is that Katy will not forfeit, and Katy does move on. They receive 1-year probation for this infraction. They self-reported a kid who had moved in to the Katy area and had sat out the requisite 15 days that you have to when you sit out, but he was not enrolled by the time district certification, which is when you say to the UIL, these are the teams that are going to the playoffs, by the time they had gotten there. And that is a violation. Yeah. That deems him ineligible. Yeah. And so when he played 10 plays against Friendswood, Katy was using an ineligible player. And they did not dispute that they broke the rules.
Not even close. They
instead pleaded for mercy. Yeah. And that's what this was. You saw them pleading for mercy to this three-member panel, and the 3-member panel granted them mercy, and Katy will stay in the playoffs. I have a lot of thoughts to unpack on this.
Okay.
So if we can start. First of all, and I know that there are a lot of other people out there in the media who are going to disagree with me when I say this, but I think the UIL got it right. I think this is the right call. This is an instance in which the punishment, which would be to knock Katy out of the playoffs, disqualify the entire team, would not have fit the crime. Yeah. Now, Katy had been rather cavalier, and I think that the UIL did a good job of kind of playing both sides of this and sending a message to everyone else because they knew the whole state was watching and listening. Did a good job of saying to the state, this is not okay. Yeah. This is, they were put in a situation where they could either punish the team in what I think is an appropriate way, and set a dangerous precedent in that fashion, and we'll get to that in a moment, or they could overly punish Katy and stick to their guns. I tend to think that you don't need to kick the team out of the playoffs for what they say was an honest mistake. And I don't feel like they would risk their entire season to play some kid for 10 snaps.
Sure.
So I think, in the end, the UIL got it right. There's that.
Okay.
Hard stop. Okay? Number 2. This is a big problem for the UIL. Yeah. This is a huge, huge problem for the UIL because they just set a very, very dangerous precedent.
Yeah.
Because they essentially told the state, if you plead ignorance and you say, oh, I didn't mean to do that.
And we buy it.
And you do a good enough job convincing us that, oh, I didn't know the rule or, oh, I didn't mean to, that it's okay.
Yeah.
That you can get away with anything. And that is an extremely dangerous precedent to set. And so now, I guarantee you, every other coach in the state, their ears perked up.
Yeah.
Because they have a little bit of an out.
Yeah.
If they ever get caught, all they say is, well, I didn't know.
Something to remember.
I didn't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then all they can do is point to Katy and say, look at them.
Yeah.
You had the ability to drop the hammer on them, and you didn't.
Yeah.
So why would you drop the hammer on us? And there's a lot of factors in this. Okay, there's a lot of things. Let's talk about what doesn't matter for a second. Let's talk about what doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who this kid is.
Right.
It doesn't matter if he's a big-time prospect. It doesn't matter what year he is. It doesn't matter anything. And honestly, I've seen his name floating out there, and I don't care.
Yeah.
That's irrelevant, and I don't think that kid who did nothing wrong needs to be
stigmatized.
Yeah. Exactly. I don't think that needs to happen. Here's what is interesting, though. If this weren't Katy, if this were...
I have said this a lot this morning.
If this were...
Kilgore.
No, let's even go less high profile. If this were High Island, if this were a six-man team.
Yeah.
If this were High Island. Hi, High Island. You guys are good. If it were them, would the UIL have come to the same decision?
If this was Austin Akins.
If this is Austin Akins. If this is Houston Scarborough.
Yeah.
If this is any number of teams that are not
Katy.
Yeah. That Katy is a program with pedigree. They're a program that is rolling right now. They knew the eyes of the state were going to be on them.
Let's be honest, this is a 20-year dynasty.
It's a 20-year dynasty.
There is, all due respect to some of the best teams in the state going right now, they have been doing this for 2 decades.
They have a big fan base.
Yeah.
They are an affluent area.
Yes.
Which cannot be overstated.
No.
If this is not Katy, does this same thing come down?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I know the answer to that. Again, I want to back up and say that I think the UIL got it right, because I think in this particular instance, the punishment of kicking them out of the playoffs would not have fit the crime. That said, this is an extremely dangerous precedent that now opens the door to potential favoritism. To saying, you're the big school, we're going to let you keep playing, holding you to a different standard.
So much this year, it would be so unfair for us
holding
to do that
you to a
right
different
now.
standard than we're holding everybody else. So now the onus is on the UIL to come together at some point before next football season and do one of two things.
Yeah.
Either clarify the rules and make it extremely clear that this is the way it's going to be from now on, or change the rules. Yeah. Because right now, the way that they've got it right now, where they basically gave Katy a pass on breaking the rules. That is what happened. They did not... Katy never, ever said that they didn't break the rules. They said they didn't mean to.
Yeah.
Basically, they got caught speeding and they got off with a warning.
I didn't know the speed changed.
They didn't know the speed limit changed. Yeah. They did not see the speed limit sign. Again, I think the UIL made the right move, but I think that this is a very dangerous precedent. And then one other point to make. Is that I think Katy's going to face a perception problem here. That fair or not, and it's in many respects unfair, but fair or not, there is going to be a statewide idea that Katy just pulled one over on us.
Yeah.
That Katy just got away with one. And that's something they're going to have to overcome. Yeah. That's something that they are going to be considered, they are going to be considered kind of, a team that you don't root for because they got away with one. Now, I don't think that's necessarily fair, but it is the reality of the situation.
Sure.
And this is a very tangled web of this situation that I think that it's good on Katy that they self-reported, although apparently
there's some murkiness about how much they really self-reported if it wasn't spurred by someone else's questions.
Correct.
Yeah.
That they got ahead of the curve in self-reporting.
Yeah.
I am glad that this is done and that we can focus on football, although we're going to talk to Danny Davis about it in just a minute, so it's not done. I'm glad that this is done. I'm glad that we're getting Katy versus Manville.
I am too.
From a football perspective, because it would have been a shame, all due respect to our friends at Friendswood, our friends at Friendswood, that they would have, but them coming in on a day's notice to come in and play, it would have, it would have been a no contest.
Yeah, it's just not fair. They wouldn't have had the prep time they need.
Exactly. I'm glad we're getting this game.
From a competition standpoint, as someone like you who agrees with the ruling and doesn't think that they were playing an ineligible player to their benefit, I think we would have lost something. You know, all due respect to Lake Travis, Geyer, Mansfield, Manville, all these teams still in the fight. Steele, if one of them had gone on to win it and hadn't had to gone through Katy, I just don't think it would have been the same.
There would have been the asterisk.
Yeah.
It would have been like, oh, they did it, but they didn't. I want to see the best teams compete.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see.
I think the asterisk that would have come with winning a title that Katy wasn't involved in would have been bigger than the one that may come now that they win.
I think you're right.
Yeah,
I think that's a great way of putting it. So there's a lot of murkiness in this situation, and of course there are going to be opinions all over the map. Let us know what you think. #DCTF Live. It is it's a situation that comes up every once in a while, and you deal with it when it comes up. And again, to recap, I think the UIL made the right decision in this particular situation, but they are wandering down a very dangerous road.
Yeah,
that's where I stand. One of the guys who was at the UIL State Executive Committee get-together, if you will, was Danny Davis of the Austin American-Statesman, and he joins us on the phone right now. Danny, you did an excellent job live tweeting. I thought your live tweeting ability was excellent. At what point during the hearing did you feel like this was going to go Katy's way?
First off, I need you to come with me to my next staff evaluation if you're going to.
I got you, man.
Like that. But, really not until the very end. I mean, it was kind of at the beginning of the meeting, kind of throughout the, interrogation of it. It seemed kind of, like Katy's, back was up against the wall. Dr. Braddock got up, and I think he was kind of going a little bat for Katy. But even after that, it kind of seemed like, the panel was going to play by the rules and, follow the rule book. But then when each, panel member got up and James Colbert kind of leading the way, started speaking individually, it kind of seemed like they were going to, not make them forfeit, just kind of slap them on the wrist. And, it was kind of, before the vote came down, I think everyone in the room knew that was what was going to happen, but that wasn't the case throughout the entire hearing.
We're talking with Danny Davis, the Austin American-Statesman. Follow him on Twitter at AASDanny. And Danny, it was such an odd situation of an emergency meeting. Could you feel some tension in the room? Obviously, a lot at stake for Katy and a lot of pressure on the panel. Could you feel tension in the room?
I don't know so much tension. I mean, there's a lot of media in the room. Maybe if a couple Katy fans had made the move if the kid was there, but I mean it was pretty kind of straightforward. There were less people there than normal as far as administrative wise, the UIL, and obviously Katy had some representatives, and I think there were some lawyers in the room too. So maybe there was some tension in that regards, but it wasn't so much where you could hear a pin drop or anything like that. It was pretty much just kind of a straightforward meeting, although. I guess maybe I was just paying too much attention to my tweets.
Yeah, we were feeling the tension on Twitter.
Yeah, maybe
it was just us in our room staring at this Twitter feed waiting for it to update.
Maybe it was. From my personal perspective, and I just got done going on a bit of a rant about it, I think that overall, I think the UIL got it right because the punishment would not have fit the crime. But I do think that this sets an extremely dangerous precedent for the UIL. From your personal opinion standpoint, not as a reporter, but just as a guy who follows Texas high school football.
And is at a lot of these UIL meetings.
What's your take on what we just saw?
I mean, it's kind of the same thing. Katy should not have had to forfeit because some kid played on 10 plays in the game they won by 66. It wasn't like he was a starting quarterback or a significant player. I mean, that would have been a really tough pill for those two kids to swallow, and you really wouldn't do Friendswood any favors either because they'd have one day to prepare for a good Manville team. So, but, I mean, the UIL, I made a comment about this yesterday on Twitter. You just don't know what they're thinking. And, I've been into too many of these meetings. I'm sure you guys have too, where, these kids come in and they have these heartbreaking stories about having to move from one school to another for whatever reason. And sometimes that's athletics. Sometimes there's a bad situation. The UIL shoots them down. And, the entire time I was thinking, since Joanna Denson was on the committee, a couple weeks ago I went to a district 13-6A meeting because of a football tiebreaker. But, she was there since she's the Pflugerville ISD athletic director. And there was a case before they got to the tiebreaker about a kid from Cedar Ridge. He's a freshman, and he wanted to run cross country. And he had been, educated in a charter school through 8th grade. Before high school, decided he wanted to do sports that his charter school didn't provide. So he went to Cedar Ridge, which was his high school in his neighborhood. He didn't move. So he gets there pretty much like any other incoming freshman. And, they ruled that he had moved for athletic reasons. And, you think that, that's common sense that this kid didn't have this opportunity at his other school, came in like every other freshman, and his parents didn't move houses or anything like that. And, Joanna Denson was the one leading the charge. Everyone in the room kind of was like, this is kind of silly that we're going to make this kid ineligible for varsity competition. But she, kind of put her fist down and said we had to follow the rule book. And then, 2 weeks later, the situation here, and they're like, let's give some leeway. So, the UIL, we could do this trial tomorrow, and they may rule differently. It kind of depends on who's on the board and how they feel that day. And, it's going to be interesting the next time a similar case goes in front of them.
So then you would say that you're not necessarily surprised just because the UIL doesn't necessarily have a hard and fast kind of stance on these types of things?
I'm not surprised. I didn't really think Katy was going to have to forfeit, to be honest. I think that's there may be a little, maybe a little bit too outside pressure, and it is Katy, and that's a huge program, and that'd be kind of a big stain on their on the playoffs if that happened. And this is kind of a business, and Katy is a Houston area school, and I didn't think that was going to happen. And with the way the UIL has handled things this year, with the the DeSoto wide receiver, all that mess with the Anderson kid, with the Jay hearings and this, I mean, it didn't surprise me. And it is disappointing with the way that this all kind of turned out, but I mean, nothing with the UIL is really that shocking.